So we are discussing about the HO model. Let me start from there. Yes, this is the physical definition and the HO model. So before this class, we have discussed about the HO model in terms of the price definition. That means if a country is, just a minute, give me 1 minute. If the country is labor abundant, then wage is lower there, right? W by R is less in that country as compared to the another country. So it was the HO model in terms of the price definition of factor abundance. Here we are going to discuss the HO model in terms of the physical definition of the factor abundance. Now, if you can understand, if a country is labor abundant, then by physical definition, L by K of that country is greater than L by K of another country because it is labor abundant. Okay, so in case of the physical definitions, there is also one-to-one correspondence between the endowment ratio and the production proportion. What is endowment ratio? Endowment ratio means L by K, and production proportion means two commodities. Okay, so two commodities here we assume as X and Y, right? Yeah. So X and Y, X is assumed as labor intensive and Y is assumed as capital intensive. So these intensity things, these are as before. But here there is one-to-one correspondence between the endowment ratio and the production proportion. That means L by K and X by Y, okay, they are directly related. Fine. So if L by K is rising, then X by Y is also rising. Okay. So why this is so? Because X is assumed as labor intensive. So if more labor is available, the more labor intensive commodity will be produced. And if more capital is available, then more capital intensive commodities will be produced. So if L by K is increasing, then X by Y is also increasing. That is why there is a one-to-one correspondence between the endowment ratio and the production proportion. So this one-to-one correspondence is called as the Rybczynski theorem. Okay, then look, there are so many Y, Z, so many things are there. Rybczynski theorem. It is called as Rybczynski theorem. The mathematical derivation, maybe it will be done by SN ma'am in Math Eco class, but I will also show you the mathematical derivation. But the Rybczynski theorem is showing that if look, it's very similar to the Stolper-Samuelson theorem. So Stolper-Samuelson theorem, that was with respect to the price definition, and Rybczynski theorem is in terms of the physical definition of factor abundance. Okay, so here it is said what Rybczynski theorem is saying. Rybczynski theorem is saying that if amount of labor in an economy, if amount of labor is increased, the availability of the amount of labor is increased, then the production of labor intensive commodity that will rise, and production of capital intensive commodity that will fall. Okay, so there is no change in capital availability. Capital is available as before. There is only increase in labor availability, but because of that, production of Y, that is capital intensive commodity, that is falling. So this is the Rybczynski theorem. The look at the third bullet. Say the endowment of one factor is rising, the production of the commodity which is using that factor intensively, that will rise, and the production of other commodity will fall. Okay, and okay, the assumption is also there that there is a full employment. Fine. And how it is, look, if you are going to produce, as there is full employment, you don't have any surplus capital in your hand, and you are going to produce more of X. Why? Because amount of labor availability has increased, so you have more labor in your hand which you can employ in the X sector to produce X. But when you are going to produce x, you need more y as more capital as well, because x is using relatively more labor. That doesn't mean x is not using capital. X is also using capital, right? So when you are going to produce more of x, labor is used, but labor availability is not an issue to you because labor availability has increased. But what about the capital? There is no extra capital in your hand, but when you are going to produce more of x, you need more capital. And how to get more capital? You have to reduce the production of y. Okay, so this is logically Rybczynski theorem. Hmm. Okay, this is the logical explanation of the Rybczynski theorem. That if labor availability is rising, then the labor intensive commodity production will rise and the capital intensive commodity production will fall. And why it is? Because to produce more of labor intensive commodity, you need capital. As you don't have any sufficient capital in your hand, then you have to reduce the production of capital intensive commodity as well. So that is why y is falling. Okay, so this is the logical explanation of the Rybczynski theorem. Now I am going to show you the diagram of HO model. Look, this is the HO model. Look, this is the simple box diagram. If you can remember that OX, OY, that is the initial box. Huh? Look at my cursor, look at the pointer. This is the initial block, initial box diagram, like the box diagram in your welfare general economics. Huh? The production HUR box. Okay, so this is the production point or the production origin of the X commodity. This is the production origin of the Y commodity, and this is your contact curve. Okay, this is your contact curve. So initially your production is here, so that much of that much of labor is used for X production, that much of Y capital is used for X production, like that. Now given that, say the labor, what you are measuring on the horizontal axis, amount of labor available, and what you are measuring on the vertical axis, amount of capital available. Okay, now given the availability of the capital, say the amount of labor availability has increased, as I said here. Say amount of labor availability has increased, so the horizontal line is stretched and it is now up to here. Okay, so now your edgeward box diagram has origin of OX and OY dash. Okay, now given this OY dash, your production point is now E dash. And if you compare E and E dash, you can understand the amount of X produced at X is increased at E is increased at E dash, but amount of Y which was produced at E is reduced at E dash. Okay, so the diagram is also helping you to understand the Rybczynski theorem. Okay, now look. Yes, this is what written here, which I already explained. Say the labor endowment has, look at these bullets, you can understand it now easily. Say labor endowment has increased. So more labor intensive commodities produced now. To produce that labor intensive commodity, you need more capital. Okay, because you need both the factors to produce a commodity. So there is full employment. So production of capital intensive commodity has to be reduced. Then only you will have some extra capital which you can employ in your labor intensive commodity production. Okay, so this is all about the Rybczynski theorem. Now look at the mathematics. Okay, before that, up to this point, any problem? Achha, Wednesday there is a holiday in the college, so if you have any class on Wednesday, that will not be held. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, today's class was from 12:10 or 12.
No, actually, look, it is from 12:10. Who are you?
Yes.
What's your name?
Ma'am Anjana. Actually, I joined at 12:10. I thought the class starts from
No,
12:10
no, no, no. Yes,
according to the new routine.
yes, it's from 12:10 to 1:10. But the thing is, in case of Google Classroom, I cannot take the class, I cannot adjust the class from 12:10. Either it will from 12 or from 12:15. So that is why the class is in Google Meet, it is from 12 to 12, 12 to 1. Hmm. And as I was available and I was watching, ki, okay, 20 students are there. So I just started the class and I will take the class
Oh,
from 12. Okay.
okay, ma'am. Okay,
Do you
ma'am.
have any class before my class today?
Yes, ma'am. SG ma'am's class.
Okay. When it was end?
I think it ended at around 11:50 or something.
Okay, okay. Because the students were available there, they were talking. I was listening that thing. So that is what I think. Okay, so it's done. So start it so that I can finish it earlier.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
But anyway, I will allow up to 12:10. I will allow
And
the.
ma'am, the
Okay,
attendance,
okay.
today's
I will give
attendance.
you the attendance. Okay, I know that this is the issue. I will give you the attendance after my class. Please wait.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Officially, the class will from 12:10, but as I cannot adjust the class in the Google Meet from 12:10, so I have allotted the class from 12 to 1. And if most of the students are available in the class, I will take the class from 12. Okay, but I will allow up to 12:10 for attendance. Now, look, so this is the economic interpretation of the Rybczynski theorem. Now look at the mathematics of the Rybczynski theorem, a little bit clumsy and the lengthy as well. Uh, Look, this is the labor this is the labor constraint. L is equal to, as there is full employment, that is why the equality is there. Just a minute, where is my pointer? Yes. So this is the labor constraint. L is equal to ALX into X plus ALY into Y. You know what is ALX and ALY. This is the unit labor requirement in X sector and Y sector. Similarly, for capital constraint, K is equal to AKX into X plus AKY into Y. Okay, so you have these two constraints. As W by R is unchanged. Now look, this is not the price definition. Okay, so this is the physical definition. So W by R is unchanged throughout the discussion. So factor coefficients are also unchanged. Factor coefficient means ALX, ALY. These things are also unchanged. Okay, these are just the parameter. Now, if you differentiate equation 1, total differentiate equation 1, then you have DL, ALX dx plus ALY dy. So dl by L, that will be x into Lx by L. Look, that x is multiplied so that it is divided also. Okay, dx by x. So this x and this x, that will cancel out. Similarly, this y and this y, that will be cancel out. So you are getting dl by L. This is L hat is equal to tilde Lx x hat plus tilde Ly y hat. Okay, so these are nothing but the proportion or the weighted. Actually, you can say L hat is the weighted average of x hat and y hat. Okay, so these are the weightage. Now similarly, so you can this is written here. Similarly, k hat is also, this is equation 4, k hat is equal to tilde kx x hat plus tilde ky y hat. Okay, now so k hat is also the weighted average, is very similar to the Stolper-Samuelson. So if I divide, or sorry, if I deduct 4 from the 3, then you have L hat minus K hat is equal to tilde Lx minus tilde Ky x hat minus tilde, just an arrangement. Now the determinant tilde, that is tilde Lx, tilde Ly, tilde Kx, tilde Ky. So if you multiply it, it will be like that. If you convert it in terms of y, okay, not x, then you have to take 1 minus Ly in case of 1 minus Lx, because you know tilde Lx plus tilde Ly is equal to 1. Okay, so everything is there. So it will be like tilde Ky minus tilde Ly or tilde Lx minus tilde Kx. So determinant tilde is this. Yeah, so you can write it like this. So as determinant tilde is greater than 0, why it is greater than 0? Because x is labor intensive and y is capital intensive. Look, x is labor intensive and y is capital intensive. So del tilde Lx is greater than tilde Kx always. So that is why determinant tilde is greater than 0, and it is also less than 1. Why? Because it is the, you can understand, it is the difference between the two positive fractions. So it is less than 1. So you can say as determinant tilde is a positive fraction. Hmm. So x hat minus y hat, that will be L hat minus K hat by determinant tilde. So if L hat is greater than K hat, if L hat is greater than K hat, that means change in labor availability is greater than change in capital availability, then change in X production will be greater than change in Y production. Okay. Now, if L hat is greater than 0, okay, on this part, as L and K, these are the weighted average of x hat and y hat. So you can just arrange this inequality in this way. X hat is greater than L hat, is greater than K hat, is greater than y hat. Okay. So once you have, this is the Rybczynski theorem. Now, if L hat is greater than 0 and K hat is equal to 0, that means there is no change in capital availability. Only labor availability has increased. Okay. Then you have X hat is, if you just put 0 here, the K hat is equal to 0, so ignore it. And L hat is greater than 0. So then X hat will be greater than 0. That means production of X has increased. And K hat will be less than, Y hat will be less than 0. That means production of Y will fall. So this is all about Rybczynski theorem from mathematics. Up to this point, any problem? This mathematical portion, if you have any query. Okay, I think you don't have any query. So now, so this is all about the Rybczynski theorem. But what is HO theorem? What about the HO theorem? Where is Hescher-Ohlin theorem? Now look, if you approve your Rybczynski theorem, you know the spelling of Rybczynski is so hard to write, so I'm writing it just R theorem. Okay, people are calling it as R theorem. Due to Rybczynski theorem, y by x in country B is greater than y by x in country A for a particular px by py. Why? Because more labor is available in country A, or rather more capital is available in country B. So if more capital is available, so as there is one-to-one correspondence between L by K and x by y, so as more capital is available in country B, so y by x is greater in country B than in country A. Okay. Now, because of the homothetic preference, y by x consumed in A is equal to y by x consumed in B. So there is no difference in demand. Okay. But y by x produced in country B is greater than y by x produced in country A because of the Rybczynski theorem. Now, say there is an autarky terms of trade in country A. Okay. Now, y by x consumed in B is less than y by x produced in B. How can I say that? Y by x consumed in B is less than y by x produced in B. Look, production of B is greater than production of A. Consumptions are same. Okay, so you can say y by x in country B, that is production, is greater than the consumption. Okay, so consumption is less than the production at given px by py. So there is an excess demand for x in country B. So in country B, there is an excess supply of y or excess demand for x. So as there is excess demand for X in country B, so Px by Py is rising in country B. So what is the situation before trade? That means at the autarky, that Px by Py in country A is less than Px by Py in country B. So as relative price of X is greater in country B, so when trade opens up, country A is going to export X in country B because the relative price is higher there. Okay, so this is how trade will happen. So you have your HO theorem. Okay, if country A is assumed as labor abundant, then country A is going to export the labor intensive commodity. So your HO theorem is proved with the help of the Ripsinski theorem. Okay, so here comes your HO theorem. Any question after that? Okay, hopefully you don't have any question. That is a good indicator. As you have don't question, yes, you don't have any question, it is very easy for me to finish the syllabus. Now, what is the, this is a question generally coming around 4 marks. Huh? What is the advancement of the HO theorem over the Ricardian model? That means that what are the points which could not be explained by Ricardo, but it can be explained by HO model. So this is the advancement. So what are those? First thing, Ricardian model is based on one factor of production and the HO model is based on two factor of production, right? In the Ricardian model, we assume there is only labor to produce. But in the HO model, there are labor and capital. Both factors are there for the production. This is the first advancement. The second advancement is Ricardian model ends with the complete specialization, right? As I said repeatedly, Ricardian model is dealing with the complete specialization. But HO model is also for incomplete. You can go for complete specialization, but that will be a special case. But in general, HO model is dealing with the incomplete specialization. That means after trade also both countries can produce both. Okay. Ricardian model is narrow in that sense and HO model is general because it can explain more reality as compared to Ricardo. Okay. Now, this is another question you may get in case of this is actually that should be a part of the Ricardo. What is the role of demand in Ricardo? In autarky, demand plays no role. Why? Because in autarky, whatever you are producing, you have to consume. In Ricardo, try to understand. Okay. In Ricardo, whatever you are producing at the autarky, you have to consume it because there is no scope of exchange. So there was no need of demand in that case. But after trade, demand plays an important role. If you can remember our look, just a minute. That was our relative supply curve like this, and that was our relative demand curve, right? So that demand, here comes the demand. The relative demand curve is giving you the idea about the complete specialization. If the demand curve is here, it will be in complete specialization. So demand is playing an important role after trade. Okay. This one, as I said here, relative demand, relative supply diagram to determine the terms of trade. So terms of trade is here, right? Here we are getting the terms of trade. So this is our terms of trade. So the terms of trade is determined by the interaction between the relative supply and the relative demand curve. So this is how the demand is playing a role in case of demand, in case of Ricardo. Okay. Now, this is another problem. This is another idea of the HO model, extension of the HO model, and the reality of the HO model, I should say. And so you may get this type of question around 5 to 8 marks question. What is Leontief paradox? Explain Leontief paradox. Write a short note on Leontief paradox. Okay. So what is that? The Leontief paradox. This is actually introduced by Leontief. This is a paradox. Okay, so I think that will be a bit interesting to you. Where is the paradox? You have the HO model in your hand, and what the HO model is saying? HO model is saying that if you are labor abundant, you should produce more of labor intensive commodity and will export it. If you are capital abundant, then you should produce more of capital intensive commodity and will export it, right? So this is the theory. Leontief had it. Now he was going to use this theorem. He was going to check this theory from the real data. Okay, so he took the data of the export import data of the U.S. economy of 1947. Mm. And he was checking that US economy is considered as a capital abundant country. Okay, US economy is always as a capital abundant country, and as a capital abundant country, US economy should export capital intensive commodity according to HO model. So he was just checking whether it is true or not, and he was surprised to see that US economy is continuously exporting labor intensive commodity. Being a capital abundant country, US economy is exporting labor intensive commodity. So there comes the paradox, right? There comes the paradox. Apparently HO model is failed. Okay. HO model cannot explain it. Look, this is the ratio. Huh? Capital labor ratio of import to export. Look, he is importing more capital intensive commodity. 1947, he checked it for 3 years. 1947, 51, and 62. For over the years, he is watching the ratio is like that 1.3. So, importing capital intensive commodity. A capital abundant country is importing capital intensive commodity because this ratio is greater than 1. Capital labor ratio is greater than 1. So he is importing more capital intensive commodity as compared to labor intensive commodity. Okay. And this is true for 1947, true for 51, true for 1962 as well. So the conclusion is it's a paradox. It should import labor intensive commodity because it's a capital abundant country. It should import labor intensive commodity. It should export capital intensive commodity, but just opposite is happening here. So how can you explain it? How can you explain it? HO model cannot explain it. So how can you explain it? So there are different, there are different versions, different ways which are coming out after introduction of this paradox to explain the paradox. That they are saying no, it is not paradox. You can explain it in this way. So what are those? Effectiveness of the US workers. They are saying the workers of the US economy is so efficient that ultimately it is becoming labor abundant. Hmm. In US economy, US economy is capital abundant country, but the labor which are available in this economy, they are very much efficient. They are very much productive. Finally, the economy appears as a labor abundant one. That is why he is exporting labor intensive commodity. The second one is human capital. Hmm. There is another branch of economics who is saying that U.S. economy is spending a lot to develop the human capital, and as human capitals are working, human capital is so much active there, so they are under the category of capital, but actually they are the labor force. Okay, their efficiency, their productivity is so high that you can consider this under the category of capital. That is why US economy is called as a capital abundant country, but they are actually the labor force. And finally, that is why US economy is exporting labor intensive commodity. The second one is the consumption pattern. Another branch of economics, they are explaining this paradox like this: the US economy is capital abundant, true. But the people of the US economy, they are consuming a lot of capital intensive commodity, so that the domestic economy is not sufficient to supply those. So they have to, the economy has to import capital intensive commodity from rest of the world to cater this demand. So the demand for capital intensive commodity is so high in the economy, so they are importing capital intensive commodity also. As a capital abundant country, it is importing capital intensive commodity because the demand is very much capital biased. Okay. Now the fourth one is factor intensity reversal. Factor intensity reversal is like that. Factor intensity reversal is saying that if you are, if uh, in the US economy, it is like after a certain level of production, the labor intensive commodities are becoming capital intensive. And that is why the data is showing the capital abundant economy is exporting labor intensive commodity. Okay. And the last one is the technological gap and the product cycle. Technological gap means it is said that most of the consumerable commodities, they are invented in US economy. And when the commodity is just invented, as I said in my class also, when any commodity is just invented, at that time it is labor intensive. When you are going to produce for the mass level, then it is becoming capital intensive. Okay. And so there is a technological gap between the US economy and the rest of the world. Most of the commodities are invented there, so they are technologically advanced, they are so technologically sound that most of the commodities are produced in the US economy. That is why they are labor intensive, and that is why the economy is exporting labor intensive commodities. Okay. So this is how, these are the different ideas through which you can explain factor intensity reversal. The Leontief paradox. Okay. So if there is any short note about the Leontief paradox, first of all you have to explain the paradox, then you have to explain the logic behind the paradox. Okay. So these points are explaining that, okay, this is not a paradox. If you look at this result, this paradoxical result from some another angle, you may explain it logically. Okay. So this is about the Leontief paradox. Any question from there? Any question from Leontief paradox? Generally short note or 6 to 8 marks questions, these are coming from this area. This is the end of my second unit. In the next class, I am going to start the fresh unit, that is unit 3. As it will be a fresh unit, and we have a double period on Thursday, I think. Thursday or Friday, maybe Thursday. So we will start the new unit there. So if you have any query from first or second unit anywhere, you can ask me now, because I have a lot of time to end this class. So if you have any query, you can ask me now. It's your time. I'm going to give attendance again. The first one is Anjana. Anyone else?
Present, ma'am.
Okay, Anjana is here, I know, but what about others? Is there anyone else who didn't get attendance?
Ma'am,
Yes,
19
ma'am.
is 3
Baap re baap.
Ognibho.
One by one, huh? Ognivo. Then
19 is 303, ma'am.
303. The name?
Devika.
Devika. Okay.
Ma'am, 19 is 350. Kanupriya.
Devika.
Ma'am, 19 is 350.
Yes, done. Then anyone left? Acha. So now your question. Your question from the class from unit 1 or unit 2. Anywhere, any doubt, anything.